Good morning. I want to thank everyone for coming out today. I usually start these newsmakers by saying, my name is Jamie Horowitz, and I serve as the co-chair of the National Press Club's Newsmaker Committee. I then introduce our speakers, but this morning, I hope that you will allow me to go off script and first tell a personal story. I have 3 children, and my oldest son, William, will be heading off to college this fall. And as part of that process, he had to write an essay for his college application, and it was supposed to be on the theme of what event do you feel began to move you from childhood to adulthood? What helped you to mature? And in that essay, my son wrote about 2 things. First, he was talked about his grandfather, my wife's father, who he's very close to. And my father-in-law is a survivor of Auschwitz, the Nazi concentration camp. And William, much to my surprise, went on to write that despite his love and empathy for his grandfather, as a child, he couldn't really understand what his grandfather and others went through during World War II. And that as much as he tried to wrap his head around it, after a while, it became, in his words, statistics. The second thing he wrote about was, as a high school student, he volunteered to work on a video project where he went to Charleston, West Virginia to shoot video of 8,000 American coal miners who had been cheated out of their health care. And he said that when he looked through the lens of the camera, he began to realize that these were not statistics in that case, that these were 8,000 stories, and that behind them were 8,000 families, and that lives matter. And he concluded that essay by saying that those coal miners helped him to better understand what his own family had lost during the war. And so I'm grateful to those coal miners for the lesson they taught my son, and I think this morning we're going to learn that you don't have to be Armenian to feel a connection to the tragic events that happened in that part of the world 100 years ago and are still in the headlines today. And on behalf of the Newsmaker Committee and the National Press Club, I want to say that we're truly honored and grateful to have as our guest this morning Armenia's Foreign Minister, Mr. Edward Bandian, and also from the National Commemoration of the Armenian Genocide Centennial Committee, and also the 100 Lives co-founder, Mr. Nubar Afeyan. We will first hear from the Foreign Minister and then from Mr. Afeyan, and each of our guests will speak for just a few minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions, and I will serve as the moderator for those questions, and I'll ask each member of the media to identify themselves. We also will have some reporters that will be on the phone that we'll be checking in with as well. And with that, Mr. Foreign Minister.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the Washington National Press Club for hosting us today and for the opportunity to meet this distinguished audience. I'm in Washington accompanying President of Armenia, Serge Sargsyan, who participates in the events organized in the United States in the framework of worldwide commemoration of the Armenian genocide centennial. As a nation which passed through the horrors of genocide, we feel a deep moral responsibility to raise a worldwide awareness about this scourge and to do our utmost to contribute to the prevention of crimes against humanity. It is in this spirit that the Armenians worldwide pay tribute to 1.5 million innocent victims of the Armenian genocide and join their voices to the pledge of never again. As one of the steps taken in this direction, I would like to emphasize the genocide prevention resolution initiated by Armenia and co-authored by 71 states, which was adopted this March 27th by consensus in the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva. It emphasized the importance of combating denial of genocides and crimes against humanity. Denial is not opening the door to reconciliation. It is opening the door to new crimes against humanity. It is with this understanding that Pope Francis stated during the Mass in St. Peter's Cathedral on the occasion of the centennial of the Armenian genocide, concealing or denying evil is like allowing a wound to keep bleeding without bandaging it. Regrettably, Turkey, instead of trying to comprehend the message of His Holiness, dared to accuse him for being biased. And this was not a sole case. Turkey harshly condemned all those who during the past weeks expressed their sympathies and commemorated the centennial. To name only few: the European Parliament, France, Russia, Germany, Austria, United States of America, and others. Turkey has not just condemned those countries and international organizations, it has challenged the truth and has obviously failed in its fight against justice. The worldwide commemoration of the centennial of the Armenian genocide is the testimony to that failure. More than 60 official delegations, including heads of states and parliaments, high-level government officials, paid tribute to the victims together with the Armenian nation during the solemn commemoration event at the Genocide Memorial in Yerevan. Several thousand commemoration events are taking place worldwide, held at the governmental, parliamentarian, ecumenical, academic, civil society and community levels. The statement of German President as well as the declaration of the Austrian Parliament showed that nations which 100 years ago were allies of the Ottoman Empire are facing their part of the history. On April 22nd, 23rd, the Global Forum Against the Crime of Genocide was held in Yerevan, which gathered together 600 participants, academicians, genocide scholars, lawyers, parliamentarians, clergy, journalists from 50 countries. The International Association of Genocide Scholars is planning to hold its annual conference in Armenia this July. We feel the sympathy and support from all parts of the world, international organizations, civil society, academic circles, and the world media. The headlines and the news of the major outlets at the main TV and radio channels worldwide are providing extensive coverage on the Armenian genocide and the commemoration events. The Remembrance Days could be an opportunity for acknowledging the past and laying foundations for a better future. We hoped that Turkey would embark on that road, since we firmly believe that there is a better choice than to justify those who perpetrated this genocide. In Ankara last August, I passed the invitation from the President of Armenia to the President of Turkey to participate in the centennial events in Yerevan. Once again, Turkey rejected to shake the hand extended to it. Luis Moreno Ocampo, the first prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, stated in Yerevan during the Global Forum, "If we cannot get the recognition for what happened 100 years ago, how we are going to stop genocide today? Would it be possible to avoid the horrors of Holocaust, Cambodia, Rwanda, Darfur, or the sufferings of the victims targeted by the so-called ISIS if the Armenian genocide was internationally recognized and the perpetrators were brought to justice?" We believe that yes is the right answer. If there are still people who doubt it, perhaps they can be convinced by Adolf Hitler's words that I saw again yesterday at the Washington Holocaust Museum, who on the eve of Holocaust said, "Who still talk nowadays of the extermination of the Armenians?" Ladies and gentlemen, one of the main pillars of the centennial commemoration events is the gratitude to those who assisted and supported Armenians during the dark days of the genocide. In this regard, I would like to highlight the huge charitable contribution of the Near East Relief, which was established by the US government at the urging of Henry Morgenthau, the US ambassador to Turkey, to prevent what he called the campaign of race extermination. It is credited with having cared for more than 130,000 Armenian orphans scattered across the region. Being in Washington, I would like to extend our gratitude to 44 states of the USA which have recognized the Armenian genocide. Later today, during the centennial commemorative service at the National Cathedral, we also will pay tribute to the memory of President Woodrow Wilson, who will always be remembered as a true friend of the Armenian nation, and who shared his conviction that the American people have made the cause of Armenia their own. I would like to stop here and pass the floor to Nubar Afeyan, the U.S. National Commemoration of the Armenian Genocide Centennial Chairman, for the presentation on the commemoration events in the USA and in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. The national commemoration of the Armenian Genocide Centennial began with the efforts of the Armenian Church based in the U.S., both on the East and West Coast, dioceses and prelacies. And it will provide Armenian Americans over the next 3 days the opportunity to come from all across this country to first and foremost remember and honor the memory of those who lost their lives 100 years ago. We will show a spirit and purpose of unity, gratitude, and we wish to raise the awareness in Washington and throughout the U.S., as has already been the case across the world. The centennial is clearly a personal and tragic event for all descendants of survivors, such as myself. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity to take note of the journey of survivors across the world, who with the assistance of individuals, institutions, and governments, not only managed to survive and to revive, but today thrive across the world, and thrive in a way that allows them to connect to current tragedies and to step in to offer support based on the experience that our ancestors had 100 years ago. That is, as the Foreign Minister mentioned, our obligation, and that's one that we have embraced in the U.S. National Commemoration. We also want to look forward, and these commemorations and the spirit in which we're doing them will persist in the Armenian diaspora and in Armenia over the coming decades. We really do feel a connection and a kinship to those who have gone through similar experiences. We visited the Holocaust Museum yesterday. It was very clear to us that a mere 10 years after the end of the first campaign in Ottoman Turkey, what happened in Germany clearly was influenced, and it was quite remarkable that the state of Germany and the president took note of that this year for the first time and actually recognized that there were involvements that may have crossed over between these events. And we look forward to more scholarship on that connection. As for the events of the next 3 days, there will be 3 main events. Tonight at the National Cathedral, we will assemble both American Armenians, guests from throughout the world, and representatives of the government. We are quite pleased that Vice President Biden will be joining us, as well as Ambassador Samantha Power. And that will be an ecumenical service. We witnessed in Armenia on April 23rd a gathering of many, many different leaders of faiths coming from around the world. And today, again, we look forward to the ecumenism and the support that others are expressing towards our commemoration at this special time. We will have a concert dedicated to the commemoration tomorrow night, and on Saturday, tomorrow night. Saturday, it will all culminate in an event where we will express our gratitude from the Armenian American community towards individuals. President Wilson was mentioned. There will be others who have played a very big role in our history, but also organizations, Near East Relief, the Red Cross, others who have been tremendously helpful at the time of the genocide and thereafter. But also note the growing number of countries who have chosen to place doing the right thing at the top and recognizing the genocide and allowing their citizens to follow the example and recognize this tragic event. Those are the comments that I had today. I will mention that at the end, at a personal level, as our host offered a personal story. In my own case, my grandfather was taken to be killed as part of the genocide and was actually saved, ironically, by German officers who were there participating in the logistics of the flow of tens of thousands of Armenians through the Berlin-Baghdad railway that was under construction, but at an individual level broke ranks with their government and their military leadership and stepped in and saved many Armenians, including my grandfather. And so one of the things that we realized on this centenary is that beneath the surface of a major crime, there are individual human stories and there are people who've acted as heroes. And I want to end my comments as saying that for us, among the most important messages of this experience is to recognize that the survivors often had saviors who stepped in, and that's the spirit that we want to see also in the world today as we see tragic events persist. Thank you, and we can open it for questions.
Yes, and if you could identify yourself and your news organization. Yeah, just
Dmitry Kirsang, Kavkaz, the Russian Wire Service. Mr. Minister, thank you very much for coming over to brief us. I wanted to ask you if this trip of yours and President Sargsyan's is purely commemorative, or there is an official side to it. Are you and the President also meeting U.S. officials while you're here? And secondly, if I can take a step aside for a second, permit me please to ask you if Armenia plans to sign an association agreement with the European Union. It's been rumored that something to that effect might take place in Riga at an upcoming Eastern Partnership Summit. I was hoping you could shed some light on that.
The goal of this visit of our President to the United States is participation to the commemoration events in the United States and particularly in Washington. And this visit has no bilateral dimension from this point of view. But the President and his delegation being in Washington, of course, will have and had opportunities to meet some congressmen and other officials in the United States. Concerning the question about the possible signing of the association agreement in Riga summit, I would like to say that what we said during the summit in Vilnius, that Armenia and the European Union may have intention to strengthen, to enhance, and to deepen partnership and cooperation in all formats and dimensions, taking into consideration Armenia's commitments in other integration processes. We confirmed this stance, this position during Armenia-EU Council meeting in January, and we concluded consultations between European Union and Armenia in March of this year, and we hope very much that around or in Riga summit, the mandate will be given by the European Union to European Union negotiating team to start negotiations with Armenia and to come to the agreement on new legal basis of our relations with the European Union. Thank you.
Before we, I think we also have some questions on the phone. No, not yet. Okay, so let's go to the room.
Yes, my name is Aron Vanetian, Voice of America Armenian Service. Mr. Nalbanyan, you just spoke about Turkey's reaction, but I'd like to go forward and ask the same question. How would you comment on Turkey's reaction on statements of international organizations and states on Armenian genocide centennial? And also, after these 100 years of mourning, is Armenia going to change its policy and strategy on Armenian demands?
to your first question, I would like to say that the policy of denial has no perspectives, and it has been obvious for very long. Criticizing different international organizations, different countries that raises voices for prevention of new genocides and crimes against humanity, and expressing solidarity with the Armenian people. Turkey finds itself more and more isolated on a sinking boat of denialism. The process of the recognition and condemnation of the Armenian genocide by the international community is irreversible, and the international community is expecting from Turkey the same. On the change of our policy, I don't think we need any change, because our policy was, is, and will be, first of all, the recognition, condemnation of the Armenian genocide as a very important factor on our fight together with the international community for prevention of the new crimes against humanity and new genocides.
What about restitution?
Armenia never made, or the Republic of Armenia never made any territorial claims to Turkey, and during last interview to Hurriyet by our president, he said that it is very strange that this issue is raising in Turkey, not in Armenia, and asking to make judgments and comments why this is happening.
Yes, sir.
Chuck Ross from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. You referenced meetings up on Capitol Hill, and I'm wondering, as you know, a former leader of the Democratic House, Richard Gephardt, was with you at one point in supporting recognition, and now is lobbying on the other side, and as well as other former senior members of the House on both the Republican and Democratic side. How much of a factor is that, do you think, in resistance in the United States, particularly in Congress, both historically and ongoing?
I will not concentrate on particular position of particular congressman, but overwhelming majority of the American Congress is in favor of the recognition and condemnation of the Armenian genocide, and it reflects also the consensus in the public opinion in the United States. So,
how do you know that, though? How do you know that over half? What's
through our meetings with congressmen, including and many others. It was before yesterday, during the meeting with minority and majority leaders of the Senate and several senators, they expressed very clear position and stance on that issue.
Yes, sir.
Wes Pippert, Press Club Wire. How do you feel about President Obama's reluctance or refusal to use the term genocide?
Of course, we prefer and we expect that President Obama will use the G word. At the same time, we're taking note that as a candidate for the presidency, President Obama recognized the Armenian genocide, and as a president of the United States, he said and repeated that he has not changed his stance and his views.
If I may just add to that, as a diaspora in Armenia. Oh, that's okay. As a diaspora in Armenia, if I can just add to that, politics aside, if one reads the statement made by the president this year, 5 paragraphs of it, and if Raphael Lemkin hadn't coined the word genocide until now, the word would be coined for what the president said. In other words, the crimes that were described, those who have already recognized it, reference to the Pope, Medzeren, which is the equivalent of Shoah in the Armenian culture and language. If the word didn't exist, I think it's reasonable to assume that people would have coined the word to describe what he wrote. In that regard, I think it was a very significant statement.
Yes, sir.
Turkish Anadolu Agency.
Could you speak a little louder?
Yeah, Kasım İleri my name. Turkish Anadolu Agency. Mr. President Sarkisian, no, I know. Sorry, Mr. President Sarkisian is today in Washington and tomorrow he will be in Moscow. Currently, two capitals are at odds each other. So how do you evaluate these two visits coming in the same week, and how do you evaluate Armenian-Russian relations? And is Washington happy with Mr. Sarkisian's visit to Moscow?
Very strange question, because in fact you know maybe that we have excellent strategic relations with Russia. At the same time we have very strong friendly partnership with the United States. So where is the problem to be in Washington and then to go to Moscow next, or to be in Moscow and then to come to Washington?
Yes, in the back, please.
Jason Calley with EWTN. What more would you like to see from the United States government on this issue?
On the issue of the Armenian genocide?
You've got the Vice President going to the prayer service tonight, but the President hasn't used the word. What else would you like to see from the administration?
You know that during the commemoration on April 24th in Armenia, we had a presidential delegation headed by the Secretary of Treasury. And also several congressmen were on this occasion in Armenia. And this is not the first time that American delegations visiting Armenia, also visiting the memorial of the Armenian genocide, laying flowers and praying for the memory of the victims of the Armenian genocide. And the same is going on in the United States. Mr. Nubayar Afeyan presented commemoration ceremonies and events in Washington, but also in different parts of the United States. As I mentioned, and also use this opportunity to express our gratitude to 44 states of the United States recognize the Armenian genocide, and we are sure that it will come a day when all states of the United States will recognize the Armenian genocide, and it will be recognized also on a federal level.
Yes, sir. And if I could just say one thing, I know we do have reporters on the phone who are having a hard time hearing the questions. They could hear the answers, so if people could speak up more loudly, that would be appreciated.
My name is Harold Sassouni, and I'm the publisher of the California Courier newspaper. Mr. Foreign Minister, how would you characterize give us an update on the negotiations on Nagorno-Karabakh, and how would you characterize the role that Turkey constantly expresses its wish to get involved in those negotiations?
On Nagorno-Karabakh negotiations, we are continuing together with the three co-chair countries, United States, Russia and France, negotiations for exclusively peaceful solution of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. We expressed many times our readiness to go to the solution on the basis of 5 statements made by three co-chair countries' presidents in L'Aquila, Muskoka, Deauville, Los Cabos and Enschede. And at the same time, we are also supporting the ideas and proposals of the three co-chair countries on confidence building measures, including consolidation of a ceasefire agreement, withdrawal of snipers, and the creation of a mechanism of investigation of the violations of a ceasefire agreement. Unfortunately, Azerbaijan is refusing confidence building measures and refusing also all proposals from the three co-chair states. That's why we were very close to the settlement many times, and at the last minute Azerbaijan has made a step back. They refused all working proposals, maybe some 20 working proposals presented by the three co-chairs during the last 6 years. The last one was in Kazan summit. And before Kazan summit, you know that the President of the United States called to the President of Armenia and Azerbaijan, as well as French presidents, and a written message to both presidents welcoming possible agreement and encouraging them to endorse the agreements reached during the negotiations. But unfortunately, Azerbaijanis in Kazan summit made not just a step back, but they came with 10 amendments on the agreed text. What Azerbaijan is doing, they are threatening to use force constantly. They increased military budget almost 30-fold during the last 10 years, and refusing all ideas, proposals coming from the three co-chair countries. You know that in January of this year, on 27th of January of this year, three co-chairs made a very clear and addressed statement calling Azerbaijan to stop criticize three co-chairs, to stop criticize the negotiating process, and to respect commitment for non-use of force and peaceful solution of this conflict. But unfortunately, just immediately of this statement, Azerbaijan is continuously criticizing three co-chairs and the process, and presenting the basis of the solution proposed by three co-chairs in their own way. There is an impression that we have norms and principles of international law on one side, and on other side, Azerbaijani interpretation of this of the international law, as it is happening also with human rights. Their own perception of human rights and criticism, like it was done just yesterday, criticizing the administration of the United States on the human rights issue coming from Baku. So this is the situation on this issue, but there is no alternative for the negotiations, and Armenia will continue, together with the three co-chair countries, efforts toward exclusively peaceful solution of the conflict. That's why last meeting we had in Paris with three co-chairs separately, Armenian and Azerbaijani foreign ministers, who are discussing and looking forward about the preparation of a new summit meeting between our presidents. When it will be organized, very difficult to say and premature, but we are working on it.
How about Turkey's role?
About Turkey's role, I expressed, and not only me, but representatives from three co-chair countries, that trying to link process of the Nagorno-Karabakh settlement and Armenian-Turkey normalization could harm both processes. And I said, and I could just repeat, if Turkey is interested on Nagorno-Karabakh peaceful settlement, they have to be as far as possible of this process of negotiations.
Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm going to expand on the question before. My name is Emir Sinami, I'm with the AGBU News Service. As far as Turkey's role in the Karabakh conflict, do you see a change in, do you react to the Turkish involvement militarily? Over the past 6 months, we've had quite a few bilateral exercises between Turkey and Azerbaijan. The Special Forces commander from Turkey has been involved in Azerbaijan. There's been an uptick of Special Forces type of attacks. There's been a lot more casualties over the past year that we've seen before. What is Armenia's reaction to that as far as Turkey? Do you see that as perhaps more significant sign of Turkey's position versus softening rhetoric, changing rhetoric, things like hearing Prime Minister Davutoglu saying crime against humanity as far as the Armenian genocide, and many of the other Turkish figures speaking out on the genocide? How do you evaluate those two types of Turkey's policy as far as the genocide, as far as Karabakh?
In fact, in your question, you have also an answer, because you brought several details. But in fact, Turkey had an historic chance during the last 6 years to ratify and implement agreements, protocols signed by Davutoglu himself as a then foreign minister of Turkey. Unfortunately, they missed this opportunity, and the position of the international community is completely in line with the Armenian position that in international relations it is very important to respect the principle of pacta sunt servanda. Otherwise, you will lose credibility and confidence from the international community.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Vartan Abdu from the Armenian radio in New Jersey. Syria is in the minds of all Armenians. It's the attention of the world, and we have a very large Armenian community. What is being done to support or negotiate on behalf of Armenians in Syria?
To say how to negotiate on behalf of Armenians with whom? With the Syrian authorities or with ISIS? You know, what is happening in Syria or with what is happening in Syria, this is a very complicated and difficult situation, and creating a danger for minorities, Christian minorities, but not only Christian minorities, and many minorities in Syria, they feel not secured that any changes will happen in Syria will be beneficial or positive for them. And there is a huge danger for Christians in general, Oriental Christians and Christians in the Middle East. That's why we are concentrating our efforts on organization of different panels and discussions, high-level discussions on this issue. The last one was organized in Geneva together with Vatican, Russia, and Lebanon. And also we raised this issue in different international panels and in our bilateral contacts and meetings with different countries. This issue was raised in the United States, and we are expecting new deliberations and new discussions on this very sensitive issue.
Yes, please.
Mr. Foreign Minister, you're going to be...
Can you identify yourself?
Oh, my apologies. Elizabeth Children, I'm with Horizon Armenian Television today. Mr. Foreign Minister, you're going to be signing a trade and investment framework agreement today between the U.S. and Armenia. Can you tell us what are the efforts to expand trade between U.S. and Armenia, and what are the next steps with the TIFA in place? What are the next steps to strengthening that relationship?
First of all, I would like to express our satisfaction with the level of relations with the United States. We are a good partnership on international arena on such issues like fight against all forms of terrorism, peacekeeping operations, and also non-proliferation of the weapons of mass destruction, many other issues. And we are sharing our common position on exclusively peaceful solution of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. We are thankful to the United States as one of the co-chair of the Minsk group for all efforts toward the peaceful solution of this conflict. And we are sharing with the United States the position on the normalization of Armenia-Turkey relations without preconditions, and we are paying and we are attaching importance to our economic also dimension of our relations. And the new agreement, TIFA, Trade and Investment Framework Agreement, that we are going to sign today, we consider will be an important basis, creating more opportunities and more appropriate conditions to promote investments and trade between our two countries. And with this aim, we are going to create a special consul, Armenian-American consul, to discuss the opportunities and also to think about new agreements in the economic field. And this council will have at least one meeting per year in Yerevan and in Washington, and two delegations will be headed by the High Representative from the Ministry of Economy of Armenia and from the trade representation of the United States. So we are considering this is an important step. It became possible also because of the raising of the economic presence of the United States in the United States. I mean the agreement which will be signed, I'm sure, in coming days with a global counter company in energy field. And I think that we will have new possibilities to realize joint projects with the efforts of both sides. And I would like also to mention and to thank Secretary Kerry that just 2 years ago, during our meeting in Washington, we raised this issue, and in 2 years' time, I could say that it is coming true. And we also agreed during this meeting with Secretary Kerry 2 years ago about the visa facilitation, and visa facilitation is a reality from the beginning of this year. So we're looking forward how to enhance and to deepen our partnership and cooperation with the United States.
I think we have time for just one or two more questions. Are there any other questions in the room or on the phone?
Can I ask another question?
Yes, please.
The elections in Turkey are in early June. I'm sure you're following these. What kind of outcome will favor Armenia and help move Turkish-Armenian relationships?
I will avoid to give an answer to your question because this is internal question of Turkey. And
if I could ask a question with my prerogative as the moderator. So much of what we hear about in the United States is related to Turkey and Armenia is related to this question of genocide. But can you talk about your views on how relations are with Turkey overall and maybe what your hopes are for the future?
It was the initiative of our president to start negotiations with Turkey and to start reconciliation process between two nations. It was a very difficult decision, but very wise decision by our president. And we started negotiations in Yerevan, and we had 15 rounds of negotiations between foreign ministers of Armenia and Turkey. When we started negotiations in Yerevan, I said to former Foreign Minister Ali Babacan of Turkey that we could start negotiations without any preconditions. And we had this common understanding that we're going forward without any preconditions. And we came to the agreements, which were signed two protocols in Zurich on October 10th of 2009. But unfortunately, immediately after 2009, October 10th protocols signed, Turkey again returned to the language of preconditions. And we are where we are. They are trying to present things that there are some negotiations, confidential or under curtains. This is not true. Several ideas and several proposals were made by Armenia and by different members of the international community, and each time rejected by the Turkish authorities. And we are now in 2015. This is 100th anniversary of commemoration, and this is not only the question that they are not recognizing Armenian genocide, but because we said very clearly during this process of the negotiations that the recognition of the Armenian genocide by Turkey is not a precondition for normalization of our relations and opening of borders. But the question is that they are continuing very aggressive policy of denial, which is creating real problems on any reconciliation. because reconciliation could be realized not by the approach or policy of denialism. We could turn the page together, but not with this stance of Turkey we're witnessing today. And that's why just in last few days we're witness of the recognition by several new countries of the Armenian genocide. I think not we, but the international community is expecting more and more recognitions. This is a reversible process, and I think that Turkey has to face its history and really to shake hand extended to Turkey to move forward. We are neighboring countries where we have no alternative, and we have true dialogue, true real will of both sides to do everything to move forward and to create normal relations between our two nations.
And just before we go, Mr. Alfain, I just wonder if you might even comment about how the American Armenian community and the diaspora sees these issues, what your hopes are there.
Sure, a lot of this has been covered, but I think what I would like to say is the relationship between the American community and the subset that are of Armenian origin has been a profound one for 100 years, because in fact the United States at the time of the genocide mobilized in an unprecedented way and organized relief efforts that really set the example for a century of international relief that this country has provided, and became a model to other countries. Near East Relief, which was set up for this and other to provide relief for other atrocities at the time, is just one. That really is a noteworthy connection, and in fact I think more work should be done and more research should be done on those types of issues. I think that the Armenian genocide was a very important part of the maturation of the U.S. Role in providing relief worldwide, and that period happens to have helped Armenians survive, and now 100 years later we feel a great sense of gratitude towards those steps and everything ever since. And clearly Armenians have been given a chance to thrive in this country, and we're members of the community, and we're ready to use our experience in support of others through relief, through prevention efforts, etc. So really, I think from the diaspora standpoint, we look at this centennial as a launching pad for a renewed, vigorous effort to use our experience for good, even while we recognize that there are aspects of this that are yet mired in denialism and wordsmithing. But at the end of the day, there's a very powerful experience and a connection between Armenians and the American community.
Well, thank you very much. That concludes our news.